Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. For today's video I have my February wrap-up. I read 6 books in February and I did have a 5-star read this month, which I was very happy about. On the flip side though, I did have my first 1-star read of the year, and that is actually pretty rare. Usually I'll DNF a book before I end up giving it 1 star, but you'll see why I read through the one that I did. So without further ado, let's jump into all the books that I read in the month of February. So starting off, I read The Therapist by B.A. Paris. This is an adult thriller book. We follow a couple that moves into this like very nice gated community, and then the girlfriend ends up finding out through like gossip from the neighbors that the person that lived in their house before them was murdered there. So B.A. Paris is one of my favorite thriller authors. I loved Behind Closed Doors. That was like a 5-star read for me, and all of her other books that I've read so far have been 4-star reads. This one, however, I was a little disappointed with. I still gave it 3.5 stars, so it wasn't like a horrible book by any means. I still enjoyed the writing and I was interested enough in the plot to read it to the end, but I have to say this one was very predictable, and I also feel like the main character of this book just made so many stupid decisions to the point where it felt like the plot of this book wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for all of the continuous dumb decisions that she kept making. So because of that, this was just a bit underwhelming for me, but I did still enjoy my time reading it, and I definitely will still pick up more B.A. Paris books in the future. I then listened to the audiobook of The United States of Cryptids, A Tour of American Myths and Monsters. It has a long title, so I wanted to read it off my phone to make sure that I got it right. This is by J.W. Acker, and it is narrated by Mark Sanderlin. So I did listen to the audiobook version of this. That's how I usually read a lot of my like nonfiction books. This is obviously about cryptids, so whether it's considered to be sort of fictional is, you know, up for interpretation, but I really enjoyed this. I did only give it 4 out of 5 stars just because usually when it comes to nonfiction books, they just don't rate on the same level as the fiction books that I read, but really there wasn't anything that I like disliked about this book, so I would totally recommend it if you are interested in cryptids at all. So this has so many different stories in it. Like, this is absolutely chock full of cryptids, and it's not just your usual like Sasquatch and Mothman. Like, they are in this book as well, but there's just so many other cryptids that I have never heard of before until reading this book, and it was super interesting. I also learned from this book that there are a ton of cryptid dedicated museums, and I somehow have not been to any of them, nor are any of them near where I live, which is very disappointing. In fact, I think the only cryptid that was like semi-close to where I lived was Sasquatch, just like boring old Bigfoot. Like, maybe if I saw him I would be more interested, but I kind of wish there was like a cooler one that was somewhere around where I lived. But I'm definitely interested now in checking out some of these cryptid museums that you can find all across the US. I then picked up All the Missing Girls by Megan Miranda. This is another like mystery thriller sort of book. This is my second Megan Miranda book that I've read, and I think I have determined that Megan Miranda is not the thriller mystery author for me because I already have completely forgotten what this book was about. The only thing that I can vaguely remember right now is that this is one of those books that is kind of told in reverse, so each chapter takes place a little bit before the last chapter, and I have also come to realize over the last couple of months that I don't find that those books work for me when they're told in that format. Maybe there's been like 1 or 2 occasions where they have, but for the most part I would rather just read the book in chronological order. So yes, I forgot what this book was about. I think I gave it like 3 stars in the moment, so it was like mediocre in the moment but very forgettable for me, so I don't think I will be picking up any more Megan Miranda. I then picked up Go the Distance by Jen Kalanita. This is one of the Twisted Tales books, which if you're not familiar with the Twisted Tales series, it is a series of companion novels where each one takes a different Disney movie and puts some kind of twist on it. So the tagline of this one is, "What if Meg had to become a Greek god?" So this one actually takes place after the events of the Hercules movie, in which Meg goes on a quest to try and become a Greek god so that she can spend the rest of her life with Hercules, or if she becomes a god, that would be the rest of eternity with Hercules. So yes, I'm actually really pleased to say that I really enjoyed this book. The last two Twisted Tales books that I read, I actually ended up DNFing with the idea that I would maybe go back to them later because my reading has just kind of been weird over the last couple years. So I was really nervous going into this one, but I really enjoyed it, and I usually do full dedicated review videos for the Twisted Tales books that I read, so I will have a full review coming out for this where I'll go into all my thoughts of what I liked and a couple of the things that I thought could have been better about it, but for the most part, this is one of the better Twisted Tales books that I've read. I then picked up Finding Cinderella by Colleen Hoover. This is just a short little romance novella that I did not realize until after I read this book is actually a novella that goes along with her Hopeless duology, which I have not read. So I went into this book without the context of the original duology. I don't think it mattered that much though, because this had its own plot line that it was following, and I had no problem following the plot of this book with the characters and everything without the context of reading the original duology. That being said though, this was my 1-star read of the month, which was very disappointing because I do love Colleen Hoover's books, but personally I just found the romance in here to be very weird and uncomfortable. There were so many moments in this book where I was like, if this happened to me in real life when I was on a date with somebody, I'd be like, I gotta go because this is awkward. So yes, I feel like that's like the whole point of reading a romance book, is being like really into it and enjoying the romance, but I just found it to be very uncomfortable and awkward, so this was an automatic 1-star for me, which like I said is disappointing. But I feel like at this point I've come to realize that I tend to really enjoy Colleen Hoover's adult books, and while I don't know that I'd necessarily consider this to be YA, it does follow like high school aged characters, and I just think I've kind of grown out of that kind of contemporary romance, not just with Colleen Hoover, but just the contemporary romance genre in general. I think I need to stick with adult books rather than YA. And then my final read of February was What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher. This is a retelling of Edgar Allan Poe's story, The Fall of the House of Usher, which I have never read before, but after reading this, I am very intrigued to pick it up. But because I've never read it, I don't know how closely this book follows the original one, but from what I've heard from other people that have read it, this book sticks pretty close to the original story, and it has like all the same character names and stuff like that. So I super enjoyed this book. In fact, this was my 5 out of 5 star read for the month. Everything about this book just worked really well for me, from the writing style to the plot to the setting to the characters. I just loved all of it. I would describe this as gothic body horror, so I know I've already said this before when I've talked about this book on my channel, but if you are very easily grossed out, then maybe don't pick this book up. But if you think that you can handle it, especially like just reading about it, then I would totally recommend it because I thought this book was so interesting. It does have a little bit of a slow start, but once it gets started, it's just so interesting to read about, and the writing style is very beautiful and descriptive, but in kind of a grotesque sort of way. It also is not a very long book at all. It's only about 160 pages, so if you've got any readathons coming up that you want some short books to read, then this would be the one to pick up. So those were the 6 books that I read in February. Leave me a comment down below. Let me know if you've read any of these books and what you thought of them. I'd love to discuss them with you in the comments. As always, thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!